Hey guys, Emily Muccianti here, and I am back with another video about reading intervention. And today I want to reveal to you what is my single most #1 regret as a new intervention teacher, hoping that it saves some of you some of the same aha moments that I had. But first, I would love it if you would please like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment with this video. That's how we let other teachers know we exist, and it means a great deal to me. All right, so let's jump right into this. First of all, when we're starting something new, we all make mistakes. Okay, so if you are new to intervention and you are finding yourself stumbling and kind of learning on the fly as you go, please know that that is absolutely normal. Anytime we move into a new position, we are entitled to be a rookie. And I was no different. I was a rookie many years ago. And each time I changed positions, changed grade levels, I gave myself kind of that opportunity to be the rookie and to absorb what I needed to know that year for that particular school, that particular program, as a way to just kind of assimilate everything that I needed and to give myself permission to be new and to make mistakes. But there is a mistake that really still doesn't sit well with me. And it was something that I think was so easy and I just didn't see it. So let me talk to you about what we know about reading development and how that proceeds in a child. We know a few things. Research tells us a great deal about reading acquisition for our young students. First, we know that children come into school with relatively a similar or almost non-existent skill gap, okay, talking about kindergarten, because the amount of skills that need to be mastered by that time are very, very small. So we know also that as students progress through their elementary career, their trajectories are established very early. So by about the middle of first grade, we can actually see that gap, you know, that dreaded achievement gap, we can see it start to spread about the middle of first grade. And what happens with that gap is over time, the gap widens. And so there becomes this really big chasm between the kids that can do something way up here and the kids that can't. And it just increases as kids are moving up. Now, we also know that there are certain essential literacy skills that we can actually identify super early in our students to actually know if they are at risk. If you read the National Reading Panel report, it's an oldie but a goodie in my opinion, and it talks about the 5 pillars of reading acquisition. And the first one that develops is phonemic awareness. Now, I came into a school and was doing my universal screening, and I noticed that the phonemic awareness skills across the board in our kinder and first grade students were really, really low. The majority of them were below benchmark or well below benchmark. And that's a problem. That's a problem because phonemic awareness is such a critical early literacy skill. It is the building blocks for phonics. Kids that don't have phonemic awareness are going to have a very difficult time learning to decode in an alphabetic writing system. And so we need to have this skill in place. We also know that if we teach phonemic awareness, that we can actually improve the outcomes of our youngest readers. And so I was with this information, this data, and I was hanging on to kind of a myth. And the myth was that kids will catch up. Kindergarten kids in particular will catch up. They're young, they're immature, they're not ready, and that they will just catch up. That is probably one of the biggest things that I wish I had wiped from my memory early on in my career, but that's still not my biggest regret. So hang on. So I had this data. I could see the data was screaming at me. Kids were struggling in this area. And we know that as interventionists, there's only so much time in the day in order to service all of the students that you need to, especially if you are in a situation similar to mine, where I had a team of paras and we had about 3.5 to 4 hours to service our entire K-6 school. We did 30-minute intervention periods, and with a platooning model, it was fantastic, but there's only so much time in the day. And so what I did at this time is I continued with servicing our 1st grade through 6th grade students, even though the data from 6th grade showed that there was very few students that were in fact really drastically behind, because they had been part of this school that had this great intervention program. I kept very few, used my resources for those 6th graders when, you ready for it? I didn't service kindergarten. And it's my biggest regret in intervention ever, because I was hanging on to, they're young, they're not ready, and they will catch up. And now that I know what I know about reading development, about reading research, I could kick myself. Now, I'm going to tell you what I did to fix this problem, but I want to stay here just for a minute. We know that kids won't catch up. That doesn't happen, okay? Unless there's serious intervention, serious instruction that comes into place, kids are going to stay on a very low trajectory. We also know about brain research and cognitive research that tells us the brain when kids are young is very malleable. It's very easy, relatively speaking, to teach a young child a skill rather than teaching an older child a skill once that brain starts to kind of, for lack of better time, solidify. It's not really solidifying, but I'm not a brain researcher, so you know what I mean. It becomes less malleable the older we get. And so when I was servicing 6th grade students, I was taking my resources and applying it because I was worried that they weren't going to get what they needed in middle school. And in a perfect world, I guess I would be able to service everybody, but that didn't work out in my program. And so I had to make a choice. What I realized now is that I had to make a shift, and I had to figure this out, because that time when those kids are so flexible and like little sponges, I was missing this incredibly rich opportunity to prevent those students from needing further intervention in 1st grade, 2nd grade, so that by 3rd grade, they would be well on their way. Now, some of those kids would come into our intervention in 1st grade, but again, I could kick myself for this. So what did I do as a result of this epiphany? I want you to remember, first of all, I had the data that showed the need. I had concrete numbers that proved to me that we had a problem early on that outweighed the problem that was existing in 6th grade at the time. We also had amazing teachers everywhere. So shout out to all of our teachers. But I had a great group of 6th grade teachers that were so open and I can't even think of the word. They were open to my suggestions. They were ready to take on what I had. So I could work with them with figuring out some things that they could do for those students that were still struggling. I also, this is what I did. I pulled 6th grade off of my rotation for intervention. My 6th grade teachers brought in some oral reading fluency, repeated reading practice that they did every day as a warm-up to make sure that their 6th graders were continuing to build some fluency skills, because we know that fluency is a super strong indicator of comprehension. And so that was one quick, easy thing that they could do. And I trained them in how to do that. The other thing I did with 6th grade is I reserved some time at the end of my day, about 30 minutes, where those kids that were still really struggling, I myself pulled them. So it was just one group rather than taking my team of paras that were so valuable during that platooning time and our intervention reading lab time. And so I still was able to target a couple of kids, and they were, 3 to 5 students that were still really struggling. And so I would come in and support them at that time. But what did I do that made the biggest difference? I gave the 6th grade spot to my kindergarten class. Now, it is a different monster at kindergarten with our inside of our platooning situation, because our kindergarten teachers did not platoon. Our kindergarten teachers were still providing instruction with their own classes. So that was one difference between kindergarten and the rest of our grade levels. But we would walk over, pick up our kindergartners that we determined to need those flexible groupings inside of the intervention program. We provided instruction, and here's what it looked like. They would come in and I would sit them down on the carpet as a whole group. So it was about 15 to 18 kids, between 4 or 5 of us. We tried to keep our groups in kindergarten at about 3 to 4 students in a group. So they would come in, they would sit at the carpet, and I would do phonemic awareness drills with them using Hegarty. We also pushed Hegarty into all of our kindergarten and 1st grade classes because it was an across the board deficit that we saw. And so I trained our teachers in how to use that, but the kids that came to the reading lab had extra support in that particular area. Once we spent about, I would say, 6 to 7 minutes, maybe 8 minutes working on phonemic awareness, we would stand up and we would do some singing and dancing with either the Heidi songs or our Jack Hartman, who I love, because we wanted to engage our kindergartners in movement, multisensory instruction, and we were working on things like the sounds of the letters, and some of our students didn't know the alphabet, and so we had some alphabet songs in there. And then we would disperse them into our small groups. And at that point, we were working with some fine motor skills, writing letters, writing their names, identifying sounds that letters make, doing some sorting. We eventually started using Explode the Code so that we could continue to build that early phonemic awareness with our kindergartners. And I'm telling you, it was amazing what came of it. We were able to move so many of those students that would have been in our interventions in 1st grade and maybe even 2nd grade and further on. We were able to move them out because we gave them intensive intervention that was tied to the data. We knew exactly what the problem was, and we were able to give them this attention that they wouldn't have been able to get, or an extra bit of attention. Our kindergarten teachers did a great job within their small groups, but they needed more. So my number one regret is not doing that sooner. It took me, I was one of those people that thought, well, they're young, they're little, they don't know how to control themselves, much less know these early literacy skills. And I was hanging on to they're gonna catch up. The core instruction's going to be enough. And it wasn't. And so what did I do as a result of that? I made a shift. I went to my principal, I said, here's what I see. Here's what I think we need to do. And he was amazing and supported me every step of the way and said, do it. I explained what was happening with our teachers. I showed them the data. they were on board. Of course, our teachers are always happy whenever somebody is willing to take those kids and work with them at a smaller group setting. And so it just became this thing that I could have kicked myself for not doing so many years earlier, because I think I really could have saved some kids from a lot of heartache, with reading deficits down the road. But here's the reality. You do what you know until you know better. And so I share this story with you, not one to, wipe my shame on the walls, but to tell you that we are all human. And we as teachers are so strong and steadfast in our beliefs that sometimes we don't see what is right there in front of us. And once I was open to looking at that, to reading some research and to seeing what we know about the importance of early intervention, first grade was not early enough. I could have got him in kindergarten. For a few years, I chose not to. It was a choice. I forgave myself and let that guide me into making better decisions that I knew were going to help our kids. And it did. And if you haven't seen the video that shows you the results of my program, it is in there. I'll add it in to the end of this so that you can just click on it and it shows you my actual results for my actual program. I think it was pretty amazing, and I wish I would have done it sooner. So if you're finding yourself in a similar situation where you're struggling and why are you not getting the results that you need to get, consider if you're putting your resources where they can really make the biggest difference, because kindergarten and first grade are where it is. Shout out to New York City schools. I'm working with some of them through Acadience training, because you guys are doing just this, focusing in on that K2, and early intervention is crucial. It can change lives. So I hope that gives you some moments to just remember that, we're all on this journey together. When you know better, do better. Thank you for what you do. If you would like to learn more or get some free gifts and some additional support, I'm hoping to have some things available to you at readinglabsos.com. You can also find our Facebook group at Reading Lab SOS. We have a small but mighty little group that we're trying to really engage and have these conversations. This is a place you can go if you are a new intervention teacher and it is all very confusing to you. Until next time, thank you for what you do, and bye for now.